we'll start with this, a continuation to a story I've been talking about here on the channel, Claressa Shields' situation with Derek Santos and what happened in that gym, that sparring session all those years ago, and how it's grabbing all the wrong attention. You know, I was just combing through my YouTube feed suggestions, and what came in these suggestions were a number of videos from other content creators, channels much bigger than this one, that don't cover boxing exclusively,
and some that don't cover it at all, or they only cover hot button topics.
The common denominator being the number of views, the metrics for this story, whether you're talking about boxing channels or non-boxing channels. This is a story that people were paying attention to in these polarizing times.
What's going on in the world of boxing, outside the world of boxing, the battle of the sexes.
Men versus women and misogyny versus misandry. I mean, how many red pill podcasts can you name off the top of your head that bring in very big views, broaching subjects just like this one, that this entire fiasco has gotten Claressa more talked about than, say, her fight with Christina Hammer or her fight with Marie-Eve Dicaire, that this might be getting her more attention than her accolades as a former Olympian and a champion boxer.
Yeah, it's getting her attention, albeit for the wrong reasons.
What reasons are those?
I saw one video that brought in approximately 741,000 views talking about this subject, talking about Claressa getting sat on her back pocket by a low-level male boxer that even people within the world of boxing aren't that familiar with.
Over 700,000, that's close to 1 million, and that's just one video that Claressa Shields has very much gone viral, albeit for the wrong reasons. It's because Claressa likes to carry on and talk about how she'd beat up guys, not just any guy, not just any Joe Blow, but boxers like herself. Male boxers like Rowley and Keith Thurman. She even called out Gennady Golovkin once just for this video to surface. A video of her getting sat on her back pocket by a low-level male boxer, then claiming that the padding was removed from the gloves and that's why that happened, though nobody's buying that in the court of public opinion. Most feel that a man, a full-grown man, doesn't need to resort to that to put a woman on her ass. And what has my attention more than anything is that this is detrimental towards the public perception of women in sports. That now, Claressa Shields' contemporaries and all the other women boxers have become unwitting participants in what is her circus, her fiasco.
They're not a party to what she does and what she says, but they may be thought of as less than because of stuff like this.
There are women athletes, women boxers, that are fighting for equality, the same chance to fight for 12 3-minute rounds as the guys, and the same kind of pay. They're fighting, and this, a situation like it, sets them back. Those outside the world of boxing may begin to look at these athletes as being less than, not as good as the guys. Those who don't follow the sport as closely as I or you, don't give it the same time and attention and reverence, because this is what's getting attention within the sport. When a two-time gold medalist, an Olympian, and a world champion boxer, undisputed in more than one division, goes as far as describing an entire generation of men as being quote-unquote weak.
See, as you can see, the more you fuck around, the more you're going to find out.
Just to be put on her ass by one, and not even a very good one, well, people won't hesitate to give her comeuppance and say what they really feel. And unfortunately, the consequences, they don't just affect her.
You know, I've never seen Katie Taylor, Chantel Cameron, Zanicia Estrada, Alicia Baumgartner, Jessica McCaskill, or Cecilia Brækhus, or any of the other girls carry on the way that Claressa carries on. But because she's intended to be one of the best one among them,
one of the best ones, and in some circles, small ones, very small ones, the best pound-for-pound woman boxer in the sport, I've never agreed with that, but because some people have said it in the past and her fights have been billed as such, when she gets sat on her ass, sat on her back pocket, by a low-level male boxer after claiming she can challenge male boxers and beat male boxers, this gets all the wrong attention, not just for her, but the other women boxers.
People might start to think of them as being less than if she is intended to be their ambassador, the best one among them. And as stated, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm not everybody.
I'm the guy who's been saying it on repeat. In spite of how accomplished she was as an amateur and as accomplished as she is as a professional, she is just not a good ambassador for the sport. She shoots off at the mouth and pisses people off. How else do you think a two-time Olympic gold medalist? I mean, it's hard enough to win one gold medal, let alone two. But why else do you think a two-time Olympic gold medalist and a fighter who's been an undisputed champion at more than one weight has no major backers, no major corporate sponsors, no big endorsements? Why do you think that is? It's because she's not a good ambassador for the sport.
And I don't think that the other women boxers who don't carry on the way that Clarissa carries on, I don't think and I don't want for them to be thought of as less than because of her.
In the last 7 years or so, the work has been done and is still being done to put women's boxing and women boxers in a better place than they were in previous years and previous eras. And that shouldn't be belittled or marginalized due to one loudmouth broad with a god complex.
But unfortunately, due to Clarissa, it might.
So let's just be honest here. Clarissa doesn't represent all the girls. The way she carries on is not a representation of how they carry on and how they carry themselves. What happens to her because she can't get her ego in check, which I think has been a problem for her for a very long time now.
And if she is now being made an example of, don't let her be the example for the other girls, the other women boxers. She's got no situational awareness. She's tactless, brash.
What she is one loudmouth broad that needs to get her ego in check. That's what she is. In men's super bantamweight news, ahead of what is his second undisputed title run in what is his fourth division, Naoya Inoue said this about Gervonta Davis. I don't think it's possible to fight him. It's more hype that fans are putting together. I think of him very highly. If he's on the lower part of the pound-for-pound list, I think he should be up a little bit further than where he is now. Inoue and Gervonta share a mutual respect for each other. Gervonta knows of him, and Inoue knows of Gervonta, and that's all well and good that Inoue feels that way. But if fans tend to disagree, if the fans' opinion, assessment of Gervonta Davis differs from Inoue's, it's because he's not actually as proven, as accomplished as Inoue. And it's all well and good that Inoue feels that way.
It's quite the compliment. But fighters, they compliment each other here and there. That doesn't mean what they're saying is true. The issue that people have with Gervonta is he's not doing at 135 what Inoue has been doing at 118 and what he's about to do at 122.
Inoue being a pound-for-pound fighter himself, number 2 on my list. Giving Gervonta that kind of vote of confidence is admirable and flattering, but my pound-for-pound list isn't actually based on things that Inoue says or things that Inoue thinks or what any pro boxer thinks. It's based on what the pro boxers actually do, who they fight, and where they fight them, because that's what matters, and that's what proves, beyond a shadow of a doubt, how skilled they are or how skilled they aren't. It was pound-for-pound number 1 Terence Crawford who said it best. When I say I'm pound-for-pound the best fighter in the world, this is what I mean. You could put me in any weight category. If I was that size, and I would still dominate. You definitely can't say the same for everyone else. Some don't have the style for smaller fighters or bigger fighters. I do.
Now, what is Terence Crawford? And what proves that he's worthy to be a pound-for-pound fighter, to be thought of in that light? Well, he's a 3-division, 3-time Ring Magazine, 3-time Lineal, 2-time undisputed champion, having unseated 5 active reigning champions throughout his career. That's what proves it. Pound for pound is about skill.
And it is how people evaluate skill, where they differ. It's the same baseline, the same underlying principle. They're trying to evaluate who the best fighters in the world are based on skill. But how they evaluate those skills is where people differ. Now, on the Ring IQ pound for pound list, there is a governing criteria that tabulates how many titles a fighter has won, how many times has the fighter defended those titles and unified those titles, and at how many weights has that fighter been a champion, and what skills are they showing?
Which is a lot more comprehensive than somebody's fucking eye test.
An eye test is little more than a gross oversight, an evaluation of a fighter that doesn't take in several key factors into consideration. What an eye test really is another way of saying, this is what I think, or in my opinion, when opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, but not everyone's as clean.
You can think that Gervonta Davis is one of the most skilled fighters in the world. You can think that, but when is he going to prove it? the way other fighters prove it, by taking on the other champions and the best fighters at their prescribed weights, then moving up in weight and doing the same thing there. That's what pound for pound is all about.
Inoue, who's lavishing a compliment on Gervonta Davis, is a prime example. He didn't take a take-it-easy fight upon moving up to super bantamweight. His very first fight at the weight was against an unbeaten unified champion in his prime. And because he handled him the way that he did...
What was a naturally bigger man at a new weight, and he knew his first fight at that weight. You saw what he did to Stephen Fulton.
Gervonta didn't do that when he moved up from 130 to 135, or from 135 up to 140. When he went to 140, Josh Taylor was that division's undisputed champion. He was the man to beat, not Mario Barrios, a guy with a baby belt who Gervonta Davis stuck a rehydration clause on.
The issue everybody's starting to have with Gervonta is no matter what weight he campaigns in, he never fights the best fighters at those weights. I mean, Isaac Cruz ain't the best lightweight, or Ryan Garcia.
Or Hector Garcia. Hector, for God's sakes, he's a super featherweight. He didn't even do anything at lightweight. And what about Rolly? Rolly's the best lightweight in the world. The problem that people have with Gervonta is the year marks and tests that a fighter must go through, in order to prove they are who they say they are. He doesn't go through them. He doesn't do them. It's not just how a fighter looks when he's fighting, but who he's fighting that matters most. Who you fight directly affects how you fight. If you're in there with some of the best and brightest fighters and you can stay in character and win, then of course you'll be ranked as a pound-for-pound fighter for it. But when you don't fight those fighters, even if you do look dominant in what fights you're having, what is it that you're fighting? Let's not pretend that matchmaking can't help a fighter along to make him look better than he actually is, because he's matched against opponents that cater to his style. We don't actually know how good Gervonta Davis is or isn't, or how adaptable, because he fights these lesser guys that are all cut from the same cookie cutter. He didn't fight the best guys at 135, he didn't fight the best guys at 140, and it doesn't look like he's about to. So on that predication, I don't rank him on my list. He's not even a full champion at his weight, though even if he were.
Did you beat a champion to be a champion? Did you win the belt you're about to get from the WBA? Did you win it from Devin, or were you elevated after he moved up?
You know the answer. We all do. And that's why I don't rate Gervonta Davis. As it pertains to Naoya Inoue, what the future may hold for him, Inoue versus Luis Nery is being planned for May, says Nery's promoter Fernando Beltran of Zenfa Promotions. Nery and Inoue, they have a unfinished business of sorts, a need for Inoue to exact vengeance upon Nery for what he did to Shinsuke Yamanaka years ago. If Inoue does good, for sure, we will probably meet Inoue in May, Beltran told BoxingScene.com in an interview. So, honestly, I feel very confident in this fight. It's a very good fight. I really believe that Nery is one of the best fighters, if not the best 122-pounder. I think Inoue will wait for Nery, and I believe Nery wins the fight. Of course, he's going to say that. That's the fighter he promotes. Beltran's decades-long relationship with Inoue's co-promoter, Top Rank, should factor in to get a potential deal done with relative ease. The fight would most likely be staged in Japan, where Inoue is a massive draw.
I thought Luis Nery was banned from boxing in Japan.
Back in 2018, the rematch against Shinsuke Yamanaka, which took place in Japan, Nery was 3 pounds overweight and lost the title on the scales, and received what was considered at the time a lifetime ban by the Japanese Boxing Commission. Nery ended up knocking out Yamanaka in 2 rounds, and Yamanaka hasn't fought since. He retired. In recent years, Nery has fought through more weight issues and trainer changes while suffering his lone career loss to Brandon Figueroa in 2021. He's also declared that he knew he doesn't live up to his moniker of being the monster, but I suppose that getting knocked out by Brandon Figueroa, that makes Nery a monster?
Now, Luis Nery has rebounded off that loss in a very entertaining fight opposite the ring, Azat Havanesian, back in February of this year.
Luis Nery isn't thought of or talked about as one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the sport, but he could be if he shocks the world. If he beats Inoue, though, to get the chance, Inoue's got to take care of business in a little over a week's time, when he faces the only other unified champion at the weight, Marlon Tapales, for what would be his second undisputed run. I think Inoue's going to do it. I think he's going to stop that guy.
If he does, he will unseat Terrence Crawford as the #1 pound-for-pound fighter on the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list, having been an undisputed champion the same number of times at the same number of weights as Terrence, but having been a champion at more weights than Terrence. Terrence is a 3-division champion, whereas Inoue has been a champion in 4.
Terrence has beaten 5 active reigning world champions and taken belts from them, whereas if Inoue wins next week, he will have beaten 7 active reigning world champions and taken belts from them. Thus, the argument is there based on the governing criteria that structures the list. If Inoue takes care of business next weekend, he's number 1. And after that, the plan is to put him in the ring with Luis Nery, a very simple and basic, albeit capable, brawler.
And they're saying it might go down in Japan, but I thought that Luis Nery was banned from boxing in Japan. He can visit as a tourist, but can he box there?
I'm not sure. Some weeks ago, I recall hearing Bob Arum say that they might bring Inoue back to America for at least one fight next year. Inoue has boxed on American soil at least 2 to 3 times by my count, but 2 of those times it was in the bubble. Would they have to bring Inoue to America to box Nery on the premise that Nery can't box in Japan because he has a lifetime ban? Is that the situation? We'll see what happens. What is known is that Inoue is in no need of an American audience or the American dollar. He's a bigger draw in his native Japan than most, if not all, of the American fighters. He's a big enough draw that he lured Stephen Fulton to go over there. Stephen Fulton knowing that you're not going to make the kind of money fighting anybody else that you could make with Inoue in Japan. And we see how that worked out.
Even though there's talk of a lifetime ban for Luis Nery in Japan, I'd wager that Japanese audience, those boxing fans over there, would love to see Inoue rip this guy a new one, beat the hell out of him on Japanese soil. Revenge for Shinsuke Yamanaka. I don't know if they're going to lift the ban, but if they did, I think this is a very big fight in the land of the rising sun.
Perhaps bigger even than the Stephen Fulton fight was, and that was a big fight, and bigger even than the Marlon Tapales fight will be, because the fight with Nery, unlike those fights, the fight with Nery has backstory.
Should we be worried?
Well, Azat Havanesian was able to land a lot of punches on Nery, so I'd wager that if Inoue is able to land that same number of punches, it'll do more damage. I'd still favor Inoue to beat Luis Nery in what would be an entertaining fight. I don't think Nery should be overlooked, but then again, Inoue didn't get to where he's gotten to by overlooking opponents, so I would still favor Inoue to win.